Welcome to the Triage Method podcast with me, Gary McGowan, and my co-host, as always, Mr. Patrick Farrell. Paddy, how are you?
I am positively splendid, Gary. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Fantastic. Anything going on in your life?
Nothing in particular going on in my life now. I'm still on my pediatrics placement in Cork now at the moment, so that's going well. And my new little puppy is settling in quite well. He's getting my steps up, which is fantastic because normally I don't really do that many steps. If I have time, I just get my training in. So that's the priority. But now I have to get out for a walk each day. So it's serving me well.
You need to get him a little puppy treadmill for the
Yeah.
rainy days.
Yeah, that's the plan. All right. He can't, his feet won't reach the pedals on the bike erg. So it's a bit of a problem.
Anyway, look here. We're here to talk about something related to this training conversation. And what is that, Gary?
Yeah, so we're going to continue the supplement series. It's early days, but we've talked in the last episode about general health supplements. So the supplements that might cover, people who are generally health conscious, let's say. But now what we want to do is focus a little bit more on those of you who are training, who are in the gym, and who want to get an edge through supplementation. So the assumption always with supplementation is that, you've got your basics taken care of. So you have a good training plan that you're trying to follow. You've got your nutrition in order. You're sleeping enough, etc. You're doing all those things. Supplementation can, in fact, give you a bit of an edge. So that's what we want to talk about in this podcast. We'll focus on a few of the common supplements that people will take, maybe some that are slightly less common, and how they might fit into different goals. Obviously, when we're talking about multiple different compounds, we're not going to be going into great depth on every single ingredient, but you should leave this episode with a good idea as to where these different ingredients in supplements can fit in with your training goals.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, look, we very clearly understand that when we say training or exercise, that's not the same thing across the board, you know? Like if you're going out for I don't know, a run, that's obviously different. The requirements for that are different. The goals of that, the adaptations, etc., are all different than if you're going in and looking to try hit a new 3RM in the squat, you know? So we can't give you perfect recommendations without actually knowing the goal, right? And supplementation will differ and depend on the exact goal, what we're trying to achieve with this workout and with the program and your overall lifestyle, etc. Overall, like you could be looking for strength gain, right? That could be the goal, but it could also be the expression of strength in that training session. Like we talk about it oftentimes in terms of testing versus training. Like some sessions, you're going to be training. You're going to be training to get better, to adapt. Some sessions, you might be going in there testing. You might be like, today I'm actually just going to try hit a new rep max, or today I'm going to try hit heavier weights than I've ever done on this exercise, whatever. Like there's multiple things, but there are differences in terms of whether you're training versus whether you're testing. And as a result, supplementation for those two things are going to be different. For example, if you're just training, you're just trying to build strength adaptations, you're not going to go in there on fucking a gram of caffeine. You're not going to go in super hyped up to like, oh, I'm going to sniff smelling salts, everything. Like it's just a training session. You're going to be like 2 to 3 reps in reserve, Whereas if you're going in, you're like, I'm hitting a new 1 rep max. This is the heaviest weight I've ever lifted. It's going to crush me if I'm not hyped up the fuck and ready for this. Obviously, the supplementation demands, or supplementation tactics, I should say, are going to be different in those two things. So we have to be very clear on our goals, right? Same with an endurance side of things. Like, are we trying to improve our endurance with this training session, or are we trying to express that endurance, the endurance capacity that we have? Like, are we trying to go out and hit a new 5 kilometer speed time, or are we trying to go out and go, okay, I'm going to be running at a specific pace for a specific determined amount of time, etc. Again, our supplementation is going to differ based on those two things. Same with skill acquisition. Is this a skill acquisition session? versus maybe a strength gain session, an endurance session, or whatever? Or are we actually just trying to express the skill that we already have? Again, you're maybe not going to go in on a fucking gram of caffeine if you're just going in to learn how to do a few movements. This is the first time you've ever been exposed to these movements. You know, maybe you're trying to learn how to, I don't know, do an Olympic snatch, you know, a weightlifting exercise, movement, whatever you want to call it. And you're like, this is the first session I've ever done. I'm maybe going to do the bar. I might even only be using something like a broomstick. Like, obviously, you don't need to be hyper caffeinated, hyper stimulated for that session, you know? And then same again, if the goal is muscle gain, our supplementation tactics are going to be different, you know? Like, muscle gain is more of a byproduct of the training that we do, but we can still bias those adaptations, you know? And again, then we would supplement accordingly, right? So that's a long-winded way of saying that supplementation is goal dependent. It really just depends on what you're trying to achieve. And the generic advice that we're giving now is just that, generic. It's not specific for your individual goals. And I know the vast majority of people are going to the gym to improve their body composition. Like, realistically, that is probably the vast majority of people, right? So we're looking at two things really there. We're looking at some sort of muscle gain aspect, and then maybe some sort of strength acquisition aspect, right? So with that in mind, that kind of biases the recommendations that we're giving. We're generally talking about people that are trying to improve their body composition, doing some kind of bodybuilding-esque training. Now, we obviously have a bias towards resistance training, and we also have a bias towards ensuring you get some cardiovascular training in your working week as well, or your training week, I should say. But even at that, primarily we're here talking about people that are looking to change their body composition, improve muscle mass, improve strength. That's kind of the starting point. Would you agree with that, Gary?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that in mind, when we're talking about supplements, like Gary said earlier on, we're kind of assuming that you have your baseline nutrition sorted. You have a good training program. Like, supplementing, you know, whatever, with a new pre-workout or whatever, it means fucking diddly squat if your training program is shit, you know, or you're not sleeping enough, or you're stressed to the fucking gills, you know, or your diet is just atrocious. Like, you're just wasting money at that stage, right? So all of those things are foundational. Supplementation is just that. It's to supplement all the other stuff that you've already got nailed or pretty much nailed, right? So with that said, there are some supplements that we can use in the, we'll call it the peri-workout or the around workout time period, you know, window, if you will, that may potentially help with the goals of improving body composition, improving strength, improving muscle gain. So what are they, right? Well, first of all, let's break it down into a few different categories. First of all, we have the pre-workout period. So there's specific goals for the pre-workout period. Then we have the intra-workout period, which is during the workout. And then we have the post-workout period. Now, supplementation for all three of those, it's for different goals, you know? Like, in the post-workout period, you're probably not looking to get amped up. You're probably not looking to be like, yeah, man, I need to go and get highly motivated. I need to be whatever, right? You've done your workout. Now's the time to kind of wind down a little bit, refuel, recharge, right? So the goals are different. That much should be obvious, right? However, what are the goals of those different periods? Well, we'll start with the pre-workout period, and maybe we'll go through the supplements then after that, because it probably makes sense to discuss it that way. So pre-workout, what are the goals, right? Well, we want to provide energy. And I mean energy in terms of both actual energy substrates, right? So food, if you will. So again, we're presuming you have your nutrition dialed in, but then also this kind of feeling of energy or feeling energized. So that's generally going to fall into the like stimulant type category, right? So you want to have something stimulating, neurologically stimulating, if you will, during that workout, that pre-workout period, right? So energy, that's about a food or nutrition component, and then also the stimulation component. Now, motivation as well, pre-workout, you kind of want it to motivate you. You kind of want it to be something that increases your drive, your motivation, right? Again, we'll talk about how that could potentially play out in terms of a pre-workout in a second. You want something that ideally, especially if we're talking about strength, increases this kind of, we'll call it neural drive, the ability for your nervous system to communicate, we'll say, effectively with your muscles and coordinate movement, right? And again, certain compounds, they might tick multiple boxes here, right? Hydration, we know that dehydration is a cause of poor performance. So obviously we want to be hydrated going into a workout. And again, a lot of that is driven by just water intake, general water intake. So, you shake up a pre-workout shake, some of that's water, and that's helping with hydration, which is a little bit strange because you often see people doing like, oh, I dry scoop my pre-workout. And it just doesn't really make sense. A lot of these compounds that are in it, they need water to effectively be activated, but also some of them are just hydrating compounds. Like if you're dry scooping something that is like, oh, it's a load of citrulline malate, it's meant to help with the pump, but you're dehydrated, you're not hydrated enough, it's fucking useless, right? So it makes sense. Well, dry scooping doesn't really make sense, right? But anyway, hydration, that's one of the goals. And then improve blood flow. Now, those goals, a lot of them, they overlap, right? Some of them are different. Some of them are also antagonistic. Like if you take things that are very stimulating, generally they have a vasoconstrictive effect. Like if you take, a load of stimulants, caffeine, amphetamines, whatever, like you're getting a vasoconstricting effect, which may go against the actual goal of the workout. Like if you're going in and you're going, I want to have a really good pump workout, I want to get a really good pump, that's the goal of this session. Like taking a loads of caffeine beforehand, which is a stimulant, probably not going to be great for that. This is oftentimes, you'll see this a lot reported in men. They'll be like, I take my pre-workout and I'm really stressed out and my penis feels like it's shriveled up. It's like half the size that it normally is. And you're like, yeah, of course, it's vasoconstricted. There's vasculature in your penis. Of course, it's going to constrict. You've taken on a load of stimulants. Makes sense, right? So anyway, there are the goals. We can move into the compounds. But Gary, do you have anything to say on any of that in terms of the goals of a pre-workout or the goals of supplementation, we should say, in the pre-workout period?
Yeah, so just one thing would be that there's sometimes a difference between, as you said, how we want to feel prior to a training session and how we want to feel prior to performance. And if you're constantly seeking, maximal readiness prior to every training session, then that might actually lead to some counterproductive effects. This is very, very often seen when people rely on very high doses of caffeine in order to get their training done, or very high dose pre-workouts. Once they're without that, then they're in a position where they almost expect their training to go poorly. And also they basically dampen the effects of that in each training session as a result of using it so regularly. You're then not going to be able to get the benefits when you need it for performance as well. So that's just one of the themes that does permeate a lot of discussions related to supplementation. And it even goes deeper into the levels of adaptation in some cases as well, where, you can take certain supplements that might blunt certain physiological processes. We'll talk about some of them in terms of acid-base balance. You can also talk about antioxidants and things like that they might hypothetically be of use from a recovery perspective in some cases, but they actually might compromise adaptation because you want your body to adapt to the stressors. So that's just a kind of a general overarching philosophical point that we'll refer back to as we refer to each compound as we go through.
Yeah, and just further to that, you'll also see, like, if you using the caffeine example, people be like, oh, like I have to take so much caffeine for my training sessions. Like, you're effectively digging a bigger recovery hole or recovery debt. So your supplementation then influences your training program. For example, again, you're the individual that has to go in and absolutely kill themselves. You're on like 3 or 4 scoops of pre-workout before a training session, and you're on like diabolical levels of caffeine, and it's like, okay, you're hyperstimulated for that training session, but it now takes you so much to recover from that training session that you now have to change your training program. Like, you can't just train multiple times per week. You can only train 2-3 times a week because you're so stimmed out. And the only way you could train more times per week is if you take more stimulants to get yourself hyped up for the gym, to be able to express your strength, which you plateau very quickly at that, because you're just expressing strength and you're just digging a deeper and deeper recovery debt. You're never actually adapting, you know? So again, we have to be smart with this stuff. We can't just be like, oh yeah, like the goal is energy, motivation, drive. These compounds are great for it. Like they have knock-on consequences as well. Like if you're taking, again, a simple one most people would understand, if you're taking massive amounts of caffeine and it's your training is at late at night, it's going to impact your sleep. And now all of a sudden you're not getting enough sleep to recover, to be able to train, to get the adaptations that you want. So you've prioritized those momentary feelings of, yeah, I'm hyped up for my workout over the actual results of that training program, you know? So again, we just have to be smart. So yeah, anything else to add to the goals of a pre-workout?
Nope. Let's move on.
Fantastic. So let's just go with, we'll call it a motivation and drive. We'll start with choline, Gary. Why would we want to potentially supplement with choline in a pre-workout context?
Yeah, so this is probably a little bit left field for some people. And we should say that we're not listing these in terms of a hierarchy or anything. We're just going through them one by one. And when it comes to choline, why this would be relevant is in relation to neurotransmission. So neurotransmission is the process by which nerve cells communicate with each other. So if we take a step back, anytime we're doing exercise, we obviously rely heavily on the nervous system, both in terms of higher order processes, in terms of, let's say, coordination of movement, motor planning, etc. But on the fairly simple and easy to understand level, just basic muscle contraction. You need strong nervous connections that are repeatedly ongoing in order to make your muscles contract strongly, and to do that over and over again. Okay. And at these junctions between nerve cells, and between nerve cells and muscles, I should say, we have what are referred to as synapses. And at these synapses, which are the gaps between those cells, we have neurotransmitters that cross that gap and enable signal processing to take place. Now, one of the important neurotransmitters here when it comes to muscle contraction is acetylcholine. So acetylcholine, it's a neurotransmitter. It's involved in muscle contraction and many other nervous system processes. And the idea here would be that if we can provide more substrate in order to increase neurotransmitter synthesis, that this might allow us greater muscle force output, greater muscle power output, and maybe even enhance things like, coordination and things like that. So that's the idea here with choline supplementation, or acetylcholine supplementation. So the choline itself, you do get choline from your diet. So especially if you're on an animal-based diet, or a diet that's inclusive of animal-based foods, you will get choline in your diet. But supplementation may be of use for, cases where you have depletion of neurotransmitters. So for example, you're doing a hard exercise session, your neurotransmitters, acetylcholine in this case, might become depleted. How might we ensure that we get more and more acetylcholinergic neurotransmission? And there's two potential ways you can do that. Number one, you can directly provide an acetylcholine source. So that would be a supplement like alpha GPC, for example. There are other types of similar supplements, but the idea there is that you're providing more substrate. And the other way to do that would be to provide an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. So acetylcholinesterase is basically the enzyme that would break down acetylcholine within that synapse. So if you think about the acetylcholine as a neurotransmitter crossing and binding onto its receptor, if you can make that occur for longer, that's the same as having more acetylcholine. So if you inhibit the enzyme that would break down that acetylcholine, you're having a similar effect. So you can inhibit the enzyme that will break it down, or you can provide more of the substrate in the first place. And they're the two kind of supplement categories here. So you've got acetylcholine, which is alpha GPC, is probably the best source. And then the second option is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor, which is huperzine A, is probably one of the more popular ones. There are other supplements that have this type of activity, but huperzine A is one that is used relatively frequently. So they're two supplements that fit into that category. Do they have massive amounts of evidence to support performance enhancing benefits? Not really, but there is some. Okay, there's enough there that if you were, go on.
I was just going to say, like, this is going to be the case with most supplements. It's not like these are going to be game changers. We're
No.
talking about, you've got all the big blocks in play: nutrition, diet, sleep, stress management, training, etc. Right? They're the big blocks. We're talking about percentages or percentages of percentages here. Like even with, some of the bigger hitters, like we'll talk about creatine and caffeine and stuff like that, still only minor benefits. But in a sporting context, in a performance context, minor benefits add up. Like you talk about a 1% difference and it's at the Olympics, like that's the difference between like first and last place. So, and it does add, a lot of the stuff is cumulative. Now it's not completely cumulative, but it does add up. But I just wanted to also say on choline, there are other things you'll often see put in supplements, different sources of choline, different acetylcholine esterase inhibitors. There are other compounds, pharmacological compounds that kind of fall into this context as well. Even stuff that you might not necessarily associate, such as nicotine, falls into this. It's nicotinic acetylcholine is the receptor. So you can smoke a cigarette or take a nicotine gum or lozenge or whatever and get some more of this. This is also why you see like skill acquisition and verbal fluency and different things like that are potentially improved with nicotine. They're working through the same pathway here. So that is something that's important to understand, that we're not covering absolutely everything. These are the ones that we kind of think are more beneficial, or at least have more evidence and have more anecdotal data as well to support them. And while we can get into the dose of these different compounds, and I will potentially mention a few different doses, like most of this stuff, I would just recommend going to examine.com and they will have these supplements, not all the supplements, but they'll have all these different compounds and different supplements. You can look it up and be like, what's an efficacious dose? What's an effective dose based on your body weight, etc. Right? And that's important for two things. First of all, you want to obviously take an effective dose. You want to know what the effective dose is. You don't want to take too much. You don't want to take too little. But then you can also compare it to whatever supplement you're being sold, right? Or whatever supplement's being marketed to you. Because very often with supplements, especially pre-workouts, they'll have a laundry list of compounds on the label. And you're like, fuck, this is 20 different things. But then you actually look at the dose of it, and then you compare it to something like, again, examine.com. It'll have the dose there, and you go, this is like 0.5% of the effective dose. It's not even 1% of the effective dose. They just literally included it so they could include it on the label, right? And you see this very often with stuff like alpha GPC. Alpha GPC is a little bit more expensive. So people are like, oh, well, I'll just say I have alpha GPC. Now, an effective dose is somewhere in and around 600 milligrams. But you'll see it on the label of a supplement and it'll be like 50 milligrams, And while that might do something, might very, very minor thing, like it's not at the effective dose to actually notice the benefits to make it worthwhile taking that, right? So I just wanted to put that in there, but it holds true for all of the other supplements that we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. So I don't have too much else to say on the actual choline sources themselves. They're a supplement category that, I would consider it to be, speculative, probably lower on the hierarchy in terms of things that you'd want to be considering here. But I've used huperzine A myself and alpha GPC. Anecdotally, maybe some effect, probably more so from a nootropic perspective than performance for me. I don't think I've been able to decipher whether or not there's an effect there. But do they work? They probably do to some extent.
Yeah, and this is also, again, like you're going to have people that have different genetics, different polymorphisms, different things. Like, for example, I myself have a pseudocholine esterase deficiency. So me taking huperzine A, I actually feel like shit. I'm like, it just doesn't work for me because I already have effectively, it's not exactly the same, but effectively the exact same thing going on in terms of what huperzine A and what my genetic polymorphisms do. They kind of overlap, right? But I also notice that I get more of an effect from acetylcholine substrates, or compounds, so I'm like, oh, alpha GPC works really well for me. And this is, again, a commonality between all supplements and nutrition and training. There are individual effects, right? While you might see in the data, the research, whatever, be like, yeah, like there are responders, non-responders, or there's a huge magnitude of effect or a low magnitude of effect, right? You kind of have to test it out in yourself. You kind of have to see, oh, is this something that works for me? And that goes back to my earlier point. You don't just test something out and go, oh yeah, I got this completely ineffective dose of it, and it didn't work for me, so I'm obviously a non-responder to that supplement or that compound, when in reality maybe you're actually a normal responder or even a hyper responder, but you just took such a low dose that it just made no difference whatsoever. But anyway, choline, that's one of the things. Acetylcholine or so I should say, and or an acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. Fantastic. We've got that ticked off, right? Catecholamines, right? Now, there's a few in this. We don't necessarily need to go through the whole like catecholamine synthesis, biosynthesis and degradation pathways and everything. But we'll just say dopamine is in this, and we'll call it norepinephrine, epinephrine, the adrenaline type things, right? They're in this, right? So there are compounds in the body that are transformed, we'll say, into those different catecholamines, dopamine, noradrenaline, etc. Right? And we can take compounds that stimulate the production of those things, right? Like dopamine. You can take compounds that stimulate the production of dopamine. You can take compounds that, stop, just like the acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. You can take compounds that stop the reuptake of dopamine, the breakdown of dopamine, etc. Most of those things are pharmacological drugs. Taking amphetamines, you're taking like Ritalin, different things like that, right? So we're obviously not going to recommend those things pre-workout. Talk to your doctor if that's something that you want to do. You'll very often see, athletes get busted for this stuff. They're like, oh, well, why were you on? Why do you all have ADHD? Well, it's very interesting that these compounds also have a performance increasing or enhancing effect. But anyway, we digress. However, from a supplement standpoint, well, we can't necessarily influence too many of those pathways. There are certain drugs or certain compounds that we can use that influence those pathways. What we can do is provide the substrates for those pathways, right? So those pathways at least have the raw material to build the different things down the line, right? And we can do this, especially, we'll just talk about dopamine, although it does account for all those adrenaline ones, whichever one. I hate the way it's like there's an American and then there's a European or English version of these, whatever you want to call them, compounds in the body. It just makes it look like there's 4 different things going on when really there's only 2. But anyway, I digress. So what we can do is we can supplement with stuff like phenylalanine, which you'll often see on stuff like, a bottle of Coke, right? We can supplement with some phenylalanine. It's just a protein, or sorry, I should say it's an amino acid. There are people out there that have phenylketonuria. So ideally you would not supplement with phenylalanine in that case. But all that's doing is that phenylalanine is used in the biosynthesis of stuff like dopamine, right? But there is another compound intermediate to that, which is called tyrosine, right? Now, we can use phenylalanine to influence tyrosine levels, and tyrosine will then influence dopamine levels and norepinephrine levels down the line, right? However, there is a rate limiting step, and that is the tyrosine hydroxylase, I believe. So supplementing with excessive amounts of tyrosine isn't going to do all that much in terms of dopamine synthesis. Otherwise, you could just give people with Parkinson's a lot of tyrosine. That would be fantastic, because Parkinson's is signified by low dopamine transmission, right? So you might be wondering, well, why would we use tyrosine then, right? Well, it's really only the only compound that we have available to us that we can use to influence dopamine and the adrenalines, we'll say, right? The other catecholamines, right? And those things are responsible for making you feel energetic, motivated. They also have like a neural drive component to it, right? So there's a lot of stuff that they're beneficial for, right? So you'll often see these included in pre-workouts. I'm actually not too much of a fan of either of those, especially in high doses, but I actually like them in lower doses, there are also, and I should say, because you'll Google it and you'll find it, there are also other ones that you can use for just pure dopamine, such as mucuna prurines. You can use those. They have L-DOPA in them, which is L-DOPA is actually the drug that they give to people with Parkinson's, right? So you can bypass all that stuff, but whenever you start messing with neurotransmitters, you run a lot of risks, right? So I am a fan of tyrosine or phenylalanine as, oh, we're just going to make sure there's a small amount of substrate here just in case, you know? Does that mean that it's going to be our main vector? Probably not. What we probably will do is we'll use other compounds to increase the likelihood of like dopamine transmission or dopamine expression or dopamine synthesis, such as caffeine. Caffeine increases dopamine levels. It also increases dopamine receptors, right? So there's a lot of different things that are feeding in. Again, I told you these pathways are all convergent and they overlap and whatever else, right? But tyrosine can be effective. It seems to be quite effective taken pre-workout for a lot of different things. It seems to blunt the kind of excessive stress that can come from training, which is, you know, potentially good. But is it one of those ones that I'd be like, oh, everyone, you need to go out and take 2 grams of tyrosine? Probably not. If it's in a pre-workout that you take and it's in a dose of at least 500 milligrams, I'd be like, yeah, that's cool. But there are some off-target effects. There's even effects in like serotonin and different things. So it's not something that I would just be like, oh, I'm just gonna take 5 grams of this stuff, you know? But anyway, do you have any thoughts on any of that, Gary?
Yeah, so I suppose just in summary there, like when you're looking at this catecholamine pathway, you've effectively got multiple steps from phenylalanine to tyrosine to L-dopa to dopamine, and then to norepinephrine or noradrenaline and epinephrine or adrenaline. So anything that's going to potentially increase one step along the way can also impact the step beyond that. But as Paddy said, tyrosine hydroxylase, which is the enzyme that converts tyrosine to L-dopa, is often the rate limiting step. So that's why, as he said, Parkinson's patients won't just get tyrosine. Okay, so effectively what that means is if you've got a state where your dopamine synthesis has already been ramped up, it's already doing its job, you know, you've got enough going on, that enzyme will just be shut down. So you take loads of tyrosine, what happens? You metabolize it and you pee it out. That's it. Okay, not much else is going to happen. So where this is probably of most use, and again, the evidence is like really limited in exercise settings, but where it would be of most use would be, I think, in maybe like a state of competition. So for example, I think a good one here would be something like the day of a jiu-jitsu competition where like you're stimulated, you're stressed, there's a lot going on, you've got like you're on and off the mats, or playing any type of sport really where there's just a lot of stress involved. That might help both on the physical and the psychological or cognitive side of things there, because you're basically providing more substrate in a case where you might be depleting more neurotransmitters. Okay. Otherwise, extreme environment training would be another one. For example, if you're doing a run in the extreme cold or you're going on a prolonged hike, those types of things, I think these are cases where something like tyrosine might be of more use. For the everyday trainee, it's going to be very, very difficult to tell if there's any significant difference there. There probably will be some, you know, variance between individuals here because people vary in terms of their propensity for dopaminergic signaling, and that might vary depending on, you know, medications you're on. It might vary depending on your mood state. For example, you see variations in dopaminergic neurotransmission in different mental health conditions and things like that. So there's not going to be like a catch-all recommendation that this is going to be useful for everyone, but I think if it is going to benefit anyone, it would be those people who are doing, you know, things that are very physically and psychologically stressful, maybe with environmental stressors along the way as well. So I think that's probably where it's most likely to be of use. But do be aware as well that with any of these neurotransmitter substrates or neurotransmitter moderators, like if you're on medication or you have an underlying disease state, like you don't really want to be messing around with these things too much. So do take care.
100%. Which also brings us to the next category, which is stimulants. This is the one that everyone thinks of when they think of pre-workouts. They think, I'm going to get stimmed out of my fucking mind. I'm going to get hyped up. I'm going to get motivated, energetic, fantastic, right? But you also see people not realize that the research actually supports relatively high doses of, you know, stuff like caffeine. You know, people are like, oh, I had like a coffee before my workout and it has like maybe 90 milligrams of caffeine in it. And it's like, yeah, like that'll definitely work to some extent, but the research suggests maybe 200 to 400 milligrams is actually the sweet spot, you know. However, a lot of people are also sensitive to different stimulants, you know. So we have quite a lot of diverging and converging opinions here in terms of people who are like, I need to be taking nearly a gram of caffeine and whatever other stimulants we can get in here. Like I know there's loads of stimulants that, you know, are either illegal or quasi-legal or used to be legal, but someone actually has a stash of the supplements that used to have it in it, and they're banned now. Like there's so many different stimulants out there. We're not going to cover them all. Caffeine is probably the most frequently used one. It's the most frequently used one by everyday people. Like Gary, you probably have fucking coffee in front of you right now, you know, like
Coke Zero, which has caffeine.
has caffeine. It also has phenylalanine in it.
Phenylalanine,
You know what I mean? So it's like most people are using caffeine. The effective dose for caffeine as a stimulant pre-workout, somewhere in the range of 100 to 400 milligrams, probably more efficacious in the 200 to 400 milligram range. I think like a can of something like Monster, an energy drink, I think it only has like 100, 110 or
150. Yeah.
how much?
150.
Yeah, so if you have like a can of Monster and you've had like a coffee earlier in the day, you're probably at the low end of that efficacious dose in terms of 200 milligrams. Some, you know, pre-workouts like supplements, they have like 350 milligrams of caffeine in them, which is a fucking fair whack for a lot of people. But if you double scoop that, which a lot of people do, you're on like 700 milligrams, which is a very, very efficacious dose of caffeine. But it's also probably going to take some recovery to get you back to baseline, you know? And this is the thing. If you're using caffeine or you're using stimulants in general, you really can only confine them to the earlier part of the day, you know? Like caffeine takes like, what is it, 6 to 12 hours as a half-life, you know, somewhere in that range. So let's just say 9 hours. 9 hours later, if you've taken 700 milligrams of caffeine, double scoop this, you know, banger of a fucking pre-workout, and you double scoop it, you're at 700 milligrams. Like 9 hours later, you're still at like 350, you know? So like you're still at 350 milligrams of caffeine when you're trying to go to sleep. Probably not going to go to sleep, you know? 9 hours later, you're still only at half, you know? Like that could easily keep you up all night, right? Now, if you're excessively tired, like certain people, like the person I'm talking to, you know, maybe you can still go to sleep with that. But if you're a well-rested person and you do that, you're probably not going to get good quality sleep, which is kind of paradoxical. If you're doing everything right and then you take a high dose of caffeine, it makes everything worse. Whereas if you're doing everything wrong and you take a high dose of caffeine, it kind of just doesn't matter because your sleep is already shit and you're so overtired that you can still get to sleep, you know? So that's again, a little bit of a paradoxical thing. But anyway, caffeine, really good for training. There's a reason it's in pretty much every pre-workout, but we're probably going to confine it only to the earlier part of the day, which is maybe only 30% of the people out there work, or sorry, only 30% of the people out there train in the earlier part of the day. Like if you're saying your caffeine cutoff is like, let's just say 1 o'clock in the day, like most people are not training in the morning. Most people are not training in the afternoon. The vast majority of people are training in the evening. So for those people, caffeine and most other stimulants, if not all other stimulants, they're kind of out, you know, which is not how the average gym goer sees it. The average gym goer sees, oh, I'm training at 6 or 7 o'clock. Cool. Pre-workout, 30, 40 minutes beforehand, right? Which also brings me to the next point, which is for caffeine to be really effective, you probably want it in your system or start taking it into your system 60 to 90 minutes before your workout, you know, depending on exactly how you metabolize it, depending on exactly what kind of workout you're doing, etc. Right? And again, as I said earlier on, these stimulants very often are vasoconstricting. So if you're going in and doing a pump style workout or you're trying to get a lot of blood flow to an area, stimming out on a load of caffeine is probably not ideal, you know? Where it would be ideal is if you're doing a more neurologically demanding workout in terms of you're really trying to progress the weights that you're using, you're maybe doing lower rep ranges. For that kind of stuff, caffeine can be fantastic. It can also be fantastic for endurance style workouts, leading you to actually produce more force for every step you take, for example. And as a result, you actually get more work done for a given unit of time. However, if we're doing stuff like heart rate based training, we have to take that into consideration, because with caffeine in the system, you might notice that your heart rate, if you're, doing a run or something, that your heart rate is maybe 10 to 15 beats higher for a given unit of effort. Now, that does seem to reduce, especially in habitual caffeine use. But if you're going in, you're like, oh, I usually do a certain run and I usually try to keep my heart rate at 140 to 150 for this type of run. And then you whack in a stimulant and you're like, fuck, I was up at 170. Like, that was just for that workout. It's going to probably adapt over time, but it is something to pay attention to, because for everyone, or I should say, not everyone adapts the same amount over time. Like, some people, they just will consistently, even if they take boatloads of caffeine, consistently notice that it increases their heart rate 10 beats per minute for a given unit of effort. So again, we have to put that stuff into context. And then just to kind of round out the caffeine conversation and let you jump in then, Gary, like, there are other compounds that we can take with caffeine that actually kind of smooth out the effects of caffeine, in terms of they reduce the negative effects, and I'm putting that in inverted commas here, such as jitteriness, right? Some people like that. Some people use that as the effect. Like, some people are like, oh, I take this pre-workout because it makes me fucking have paranoia, like, some people like the side effects, so they're not side effects, they're just effects, right? But something like L-theanine, which is just a compound that's often found in nature along with caffeine, such as in tea, right? L-theanine in a dose of 100 to 200 milligrams can really take the edge off and can be somewhat anxiolytic, in terms of it reduces anxiety from stuff like caffeine, right? So that is something to consider if you're going to be stimulating yourself with caffeine. Maybe take some L-theanine with it. That can give a smoother ride, as can having different forms of caffeine. This is something that you'll often see in pre-workouts as well. They'll have different forms of caffeine. Usually the different forms, the only real difference is the release nature of those forms. Like, some of them are bonded to things that potentially have to be broken down before the caffeine can be used in the body. So even though they might have 200 milligrams of caffeine, there's a much smoother ride of that caffeine, in terms of your blood concentration doesn't go up quite as fast. So you might be getting like, oh, there's a more immediate release, 50 milligrams of it, and then there's 150 of an extended release. So you get a kind of smoother ride, or maybe it's 100. It depends. That's what people do in the supplement industry. They make these kind of blends that they think will work for their target audience. Maybe their target audience wants to feel stimmed out of it, so they're like, right, well, we're going to give you the blend here that makes you more stimmed out of it, right? But you'll often also see this, people being like, oh, with our one there's no crash, and the way they've done that is just have this really extended release ones here. You're just constantly getting a dip, or getting a little bit of caffeine dripped out into the system over the next 4 to 5 hours, 6 hours, so it's like, oh yeah, you didn't get a crash because you're actually still taking the supplement, which is just interesting. But anyway, Gary, do you have anything to say on any of that?
Yeah, I don't think I have too much to add there. I think that just reinforcing that point, that when you take caffeine, the doses that are used in research are often far higher than people are used to. And it seems like some supplement companies have ran away with that in recent years, and the trend seems to be, especially with a lot of the trendier pre-workout supplements now, that they're very high in caffeine, like up to, I've seen some that are just 400 milligrams per scoop, which is extremely high for someone that could be very caffeine sensitive. Like, that will drive you insane if you're not used to having caffeine. So just be aware of that, know what you're taking. Start on the lower end of the recommendation. I'd probably start somewhere around 2 milligrams per kilo as a dose, or no more than that anyway, maybe 1 to 2 before a workout, and then work your way up and see what does what for you. You often see doses of 4 to 6 milligrams per kilo and up in research, but again, that's really high if you're not used to having caffeine. And I would use that in the context where you have to perform, like it's a once off. I wouldn't be doing that before every workout, especially if you're training in the evening. So just bear that in mind, know what you're taking and go from there. Some people might need to take L-theanine. A lot of people, most people don't, but some people find that if they take it, it softens it a little bit, especially if you get anxious or you get jittery after caffeine, which a lot of people do. That might be something worth trying to enable you to still get the benefits of caffeine, because again, it's not just about how you feel, it's about the effects on the body overall. And if L-theanine can make that more tolerable, that might be of benefit. So not much else to say on that. Of course, there are other stimulant compounds. There's many different iterations of different types of caffeine-like compounds that different supplements introduce, and they'll call them particular things and try to trademark them. But caffeine, it's the basic, tried and tested, and it works. So you don't need to try the other weird and wonderful things.
100%. Moving on to, we'll call it the pump vector here, Gary. This is a favorite one. So what can we use to increase our pump?
Yeah, so these are kind of, I guess, what you'd call osmotic compounds, in that the goal effectively here is to try to draw more water into the muscle cell, to increase cellular hydration and the intracellular stressors. So the idea here would be that, number one, you might get a better pump during your workout, but two, that the stimulus of having greater cell volume might in fact be hypertrophic in and of itself. There is some evidence to support that idea. Trying to tease out the exact mechanisms of muscle hypertrophy is always something that's really difficult, because you can't exactly see what's going on in the muscle cell when you're working it and how that relates to adaptation. But it does seem like there might be some effect of cellular hydration. So effectively, the idea there would be you drag more water into the cell. That muscle is now getting greater stresses from within. It's going to appear better from without, in that you'll have a better pump. And then also that there might actually be mechanical changes associated with that. So if you've got a muscle that has greater volume to it within a given workout because of cellular hydration and also because of muscle glycogen content, i.e. the carbohydrate store within your muscle, that by changing the shape of the muscle, that could also modify your force output in some way. So there's a few different things that could be going on there.
There's also, which is a lot of time people talk about, like increased blood flow. Like there's 2 points.
That's the other
First
thing.
of all, like increasing blood flow is increasing oxygenation of the muscle. It's allowing you to actually do all the stuff that a muscle needs to do. So there's that. But then people will also argue that increasing blood flow increases nutrient delivery to the muscles. So further to Gary's point of like hydrating the muscle cells, like because you're getting more stuff to the cell, you're getting them more nutrients that they may need, amino acids, different vitamins, minerals, glucose, like we're talking about glycogen, so it's like these kind of pump things. A lot of it is driven through hydration, but also a lot of it is driven through blood flow. And as a result, all the kind of offshoots of that then as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the mechanisms vary based on the supplement as well. So for example, the first one we're talking about here is citrulline malate. And the idea here with this supplement is kind of more so to do with the blood flow aspect, the vasodilatory effect. So what happens here is the citrulline is involved in the urea cycle, and one of the things that occurs is nitric oxide synthesis, and that nitric oxide synthesis acts on the walls of your blood vessels to dilate them. And then the idea would be that you get better blood flow to the muscle, which is enabling obviously the water components of blood, but also the nutrients, the oxygen, etc., as you said. And there's also there's supply to the muscle, and then there's getting that away from the muscle that might be enhanced as well. So there is some evidence to support citrulline malate in terms of its efficacy. It's kind of one of those ones that again is it should be in a good pre-workout supplement. I think there's so little evidence for so many ingredients that if there's even a bit of evidence for any one of them, I'm like, yeah, get that in there. So citrulline malate seems like it might be of use. The problem is, and I don't say this as a problem in terms of it's not a problem to get this scoop, but the problem is a lot of pre-workout supplements, they'll have 5-gram scoops or 10-gram scoops. And for an effective dose of citrulline malate, you need 6 to 8 grams or more. So if you've got that from one ingredient, how are you ever getting an effective dose with a 5-gram scoop? So this is a big problem with pre-workout supplements. that if you go through all the ingredients we talk about today and you were to take everything that was effective, you'd need a 15 to 20 gram scoop. And most of these supplements that you're buying, they'll say, oh yeah, we have citrulline malate and we have beta alanine, but they clearly aren't dosed appropriately given the size of the scoop. So if this is a supplement you're buying that's like pre-mixed, just check out the dose that's there, because you'd probably want to see somewhere between 6 and 8 grams. And one thing you can do very cheaply as well, just buy a big bag of citrulline malate and just add it in, to your supplement. L-citrulline as well as the other version of that. I can't remember which one you need a higher dose of. I think it might be citrulline malate, but regardless, you can check that out. The mechanism is the same with both forms. So that's
Also,
citrulline.
you can really get into the weeds of fucking citrulline malate in terms of it's actually not bonded. It's actually just citrulline and malic acid. There's no bonding there, at least from my knowledge of understanding of the chemistry of it. But malic acid itself might have positive effects in terms of a variety of things, variety of mechanisms, why it might actually improve your workouts as well. But anyway, citrulline malate, that's the one that is cheap, effective. A lot of research is done with it. So that's the one that I often recommend. So 6 to 8 milligrams of that, or 6 to 8 grams of that, sorry, you're good to go.
And then the other one that kind of falls into this category is glycerol. And you'll see glycerol in some supplements. It's almost always like trademarked as something else, like Hydromax or these types of things, Pump Max formula. And it's just glycerol, okay? And this is more of an osmotic effect. I'm not sure if glycerol acts on the blood vessels themselves, but I'm pretty sure it's more of an osmotic effect in terms of bringing water into the cell. And the idea here again would be that it increases the pump, the intracellular hydration, etc. And glycerol is kind of a weird one in that, like, it's not it's not an amino acid or anything. It's kind of like a mix between a fatty acid and a carbohydrate, you could say. It does have nutrient content in that if you were having loads of glycerol, you'd want to actually track it because it's nutrition fundamentally. And the dosing here varies quite a bit. Like, you could take quite high doses here, but I think it's does tend to lead to some diarrheal effects if you take high doses of it. But up to maybe 10 grams or so, 2 to 10 grams, you'll often see 4 grams, 5 grams in a lot of supplements that you take. You can buy it as well as just like vegetable glycerin, can't you? Which is the same without the fancy trademark that you're often paying for.
Yeah, but there is slight differences in terms of that, in terms of, well, the vegetable glycerin is in a liquid, we'll say, format, whereas all these ones, the actual proprietary like technology is to get it into like a powder that is soluble and can be, mixed with different things. Whereas like vegetable glycerin actually just tastes like sugar. Like, so there's not a huge difference, but I would probably, for most people, not encourage them having this big fucking huge tub of like vegetable glycerin that they're just having to pour into their pre-workout, and it's this gloopy, like dense mixture. Like, it's just not practical for most people, especially if you're trying to divvy out like a 5-gram dose of that. You have this big fucking tub and you're like trying to get 5 grams out. Like, it's just not possible for most people, or practical, I should say, but glycerol does seem to be quite effective at, we'll call it hyperhydration, getting water fluids into the muscles, into the cells. And you have to remember, like, glycerol is a backbone of like triglycerides, for example, so like it is a compound that the body has within itself, and it will be used. Usually it's used in, well, triglyceride storage, like fatty acids get attached to it and stored as triglycerides. But also it can be burnt, effectively metabolized as a carbohydrate. So like Gary said, like, it does have an energetic value. So I wouldn't just be recklessly taking hundreds of grams of this stuff. But it does seem to, even in relatively low doses, have a hydrating effect, which is obviously beneficial for, again, hydration of the muscles, of the working muscles. So it can be effective. Is it something that I'd be like, you need to take this for your workout? Yeah, probably not. Like, it's a nice addition, but I would probably err more on the side of citrulline malate than some sort of glycerol,
Yep, reasonable. And then the next one is energy. And both of these energy things that we're going to talk about, also enhance the kind of pump vector side of things to some extent. So we should just mention that. But from an energy perspective, what are we looking to do? We're looking to provide substrates that would be involved in the energy pathways that you'd be using during exercise. So number one would, of course, be carbohydrates. We don't need to say too much on that. Just to say that carbohydrates can be used either before or during your workout. And obviously the overall priority is having carbohydrates throughout the day. They do enhance performance. We see that across pretty much every type of performance. So it would be very wise to have carbohydrates if you're trying to improve your workouts. Before a workout, something fast acting, somewhere between maybe half a gram to a gram per kilo of your body weight is reasonable within 1 to 2 hours of training. I think that's going to give you most of the benefits the carbs would give you before a workout. More prolonged endurance activities might require carbohydrates within the session, but I typically wouldn't worry about that unless I'm getting beyond 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours and then beyond. Really, anything under an hour, yeah, you're not really going to benefit from intra-workout carbohydrates all that much. And then the other component is creatine. So carbohydrates are obviously supplying both carbohydrate oxidation and glycolysis in terms of the energy pathways, and then creatine is going to support the creatine phosphate system. So creatine is involved in ATP synthesis, giving your cells energy within the muscle, and having more creatine readily available for that ATP synthesis can help with things like strength, power, speed, etc. So it's a very fast, short-term, readily available energy source. It's not going to be your prime mover for longer activities, but for short, sharp activities, creatine is very helpful. So the dose there is somewhere between 5 and 10 grams per day, every day. There have been some studies suggesting aiming for a target of 0.1 gram per kilo of body weight. We often say, just aim for 5 grams for most people, and it's probably going to, get you there, because creatine is not something that, you have to take every day, that it's an immediate effect. It's a cumulative effect in that we're trying to replete the energy stores over time. So it's similar to carbohydrates in the sense that we say the overall day is important with carbohydrates. And with creatine, again, it comes down to long-term accumulation within the muscle and having that substrate available for when you need it.
100%. I don't really have much to add to that, except that creatine is incredibly well researched.
Yes.
Excuse me. It's one of those supplements that I'm like, if you're not taking creatine, you're kind of leaving yourself shortchanged, Like if you're taking any other supplement and not creatine and you're looking for workout performance, probably take creatine. Now, does that mean that you need to take it, like you said, pre-workout? Probably not. There is research to suggest that post-workout is the optimal time to take it, because then it is absorbed into the muscles more readily, etc. Like realistically, I just try to reduce the burden of supplementation. And if you're already taking a few different things before your workout, just add the creatine in there. Like you're putting in like a pre-workout powder or whatever, like bang in the creatine, happy days, Drink it before your workout, drink it during your workout, drink it after your workout. It doesn't fucking matter, just take it. Like you can take it throughout the day as well if you want, add it to your drinks. Cool. And then that brings us to the final one in the pre-workout series here, and that is buffering. And this is buffering for acid-base balance, because if you've ever been to the gym or done training and you've noticed you've got like this, what's often called lactate buildup or lactic acid buildup, maybe we want to reduce that. Maybe we don't want to get the burn, so maybe we can get an extra few reps or run an extra little bit. And first of all, there's a lot of different things. We won't get into it because we've talked about it a few times. First of all, it's not lactate or lactic acid that's building up that causes the burn. It's a buildup of hydrogen ions because of glycolysis. But that's, again, besides the point. So there is acidosis occurring. So your muscles, your cells are becoming more acidic. Now, your blood can also become more acidic, especially if we get to a certain level, and especially if we're in hypoxic or low oxygen concentrations. However, your blood pH is relatively well managed, so that's a little bit less of a concern, right? But there are compounds that we can take that could potentially reduce the acidosis. And again, the thinking would be, okay, if we reduce the acidosis, we can get a few extra reps here, or we can perform a little bit better. We can get an extra, if I'm sprinting, I can get a slightly longer sprint, or I can go slightly faster without the burn inhibiting me, etc. Right? So from the off, we're already kind of thinking, well, that maybe applies a little bit more to strength expression or performance expression, rather than the training side of things, right? Now, it does still apply to the training side of things in terms of if over time you're able to get out a few extra reps, like maybe you're able to adapt to that stimulus quicker, faster, whatever, especially if you're looking for hypertrophy, you're like, okay, well, maybe a few extra reps, that's of benefit, right? And there's two compounds that are often used. First one is beta alanine, and that's used in a dose of 3.2 to 6.4 grams. And again, we don't need to go too deep in terms of the mechanism of action, but that seems to be effective for buffering acidosis, right? However, you actually need to take it every single day, even on non-workout days, for it to be actually effective. Like, the other thing about it is you do get this thing called paresthesia, which is this like itchy sensation, usually in your face, your like areas of your skin that generally have a little bit more blood flow, but also thinner skin. Like you might get it in your like groin area, your asshole and stuff like that. So people will get itchy all over if they take beta alanine, which is a bit of a side effect that a lot of people don't like. But you have to take it every single day to actually reap the rewards, reap the benefit of it. So that means that if you're taking beta alanine for workout improvements, you're going to have to take it on your days off. So you're going to have to deal with those itchy sensations on your days off, right? Now, there are potential benefits transiently. So if you take it, I just took it today acutely, there's some benefits to that. But really we're looking at the longer term accumulation of it in terms of what it does, sarcosine, etc. So the other compound that we use, or potentially is suggested, is something like sodium bicarbonate. Now, beta alanine seems to work really, like, we'll call it in the cell. Sodium bicarbonate seems to work like out of the cell, or maybe I'm getting that mixed up, right? But anyway, it doesn't matter. Sodium bicarbonate, again, can buffer acidosis. It can make things more alkaline when they're getting more acidic, right? Now, both of these are very frequently recommended, but I actually just don't recommend them. I just don't think they're very efficacious. I just don't think they offer all that much benefit. And in my perspective, I actually think there's potentially benefit from the acidosis in terms of a cell signaling perspective. Now, there's not a huge amount of research on that, but I actually think you could be shortchanging yourself in terms of the benefits from exercise, the things that elicit the adaptations to exercise in terms of especially like muscle building, strength accumulation, etc., if we're hammering a load of acid buffers in the pre-workout or intra-workout period. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Gary.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is with both of these supplements, there's a huge tolerability issue. So people don't like taking beta alanine because of the paresthesia, and people don't like taking sodium bicarbonate because in high doses it can cause GI upset. And that's often the case with doses that are actually kind of used in research to demonstrate the effect. So people don't like that. There's also the other elephant in the room with sodium bicarbonate, that it's not just bicarbonate, it's a fairly high dose of sodium. So if you take 10 grams of sodium bicarbonate, you're getting like, I think 2 or 3 grams of sodium from that. And that's the equivalent of 5 or 6 grams of salt, which is basically you at the guideline that we recommend for the upper limit of salt intake for most people already. So it's just one of those things that I'm not sure the juice is worth the squeeze, if you will. There's also some evidence that taking buffering compounds that reduce muscle acidosis has the potential to produce adaptations to exercise as well, because when we train, we naturally improve our muscle cells buffering capacity. So your muscle develops its own endogenous system to be able to deal with an increase in hydrogen ions or a reduction in pH. So the problem there is that if you're consistently supplementing with these things, that you won't actually even have the same adaptations. So then if you're without those supplements, your performance could potentially see a decrement. Now, the evidence isn't necessarily that well established that we can make that claim very strongly, or say that, you stop taking your beta alanine, you're going to have a 10% reduction in performance. But I think, there's enough there to suggest that, without very significant benefit, I probably wouldn't be running away with this as a very useful avenue for supplementation. There was a lot more enthusiasm about beta alanine, I think, in, probably 10 years ago than there is now. It seems like a lot of the outcomes in terms of like muscle building and stuff didn't really manifest all that much. So I think I'd be more enthusiastic about these supplements in cases where you're doing like super hard anaerobic training, like repeated sprints and that type of thing, acid bath type of training. And even at that, I'm kind of thinking, do I want to compromise my ability to adapt to that training? Maybe it's a case that you use it during a period where you're expected to perform. But overall, I would say I'm not all that enthusiastic because of, one, the evidence not being all that encouraging, the tolerability as well, and then the potential for a reduction in endogenous adaptations. I think overall, I'm a lot less enthusiastic about these supplements than I might have been before.
However, you will consistently see at least beta alanine put in pre-workouts,
Pretty much every pre-workout.
Because
you feel
it gives you that paresthesia, it gives you that tingly sensation, it gives you, oh, I can feel the pre-workout working, it's kicking in, right? So it's this kind of placebo effect, right? So you're like, oh, I feel this pre-workout, it really hits, and it's because your skin feels like it's fucking crawling off you, but is it actually effective? I wouldn't think so. Obviously, again, in some sporting contexts, like maybe if you're like a rower, for example, in rowing, I could be like, yeah, like that makes sense. You're in this fucking weird anaerobic, aerobic kind of range where, if you can get an extra little bit of buffering capacity in there, happy days, But like you said, maybe it's actually compromising your adaptations to that. But maybe that's okay if you're just trying to perform. You're just like, this is the session that I need to perform at. Makes sense, right? Now, that's the pre-workout stuff. Luckily, so you don't have to listen to us for too much longer, intra-workout and post-workout are a lot simpler. Even though people will try to make it a lot more complicated, it's actually quite simple. Because what are we trying to do intra-workout? Well, we're trying to ensure that our energy levels stay stable. That's pretty much the gist of it, right? Now, we do have a secondary goal of potentially starting the recovery process or helping the recovery process. But outside of that, it's keeping your energy level stable, keeping hydration stable, but that's more of just like drinking enough water. Now you could argue that some of the pre-workout things could fit into the intra-workout period. Like if you take creatine, like it could fit in intra-workout, and a lot of that is true, but we've covered all those compounds, so we don't need to go through them again, right? And again, you have to remember that digestion, etc., takes some time. So it's not like, oh, well, I took this thing during my workout, so that means that it's in play during my workout. Oftentimes it's not actually in play until 60 minutes later, at least. If you take a lot of caffeine intra-workout, some of it's trickling into the system during the workout, but the most of it's probably after the workout. That's when you're getting the hit of it. So again, we have to take digestion into effect. So intra-workout, really, if we're looking to keep energy levels good, performance good throughout the session, we're really only looking at intra-workout carbohydrates. Like you could argue that maybe you want to look at intra-workout BCAAs, but I think that isn't really all that effective. BCAAs can be used as an energy substrate, but I don't know why you would want to, quote unquote, teach your body to use amino acids for energy. It just doesn't seem effective if your goal is muscle building rather than muscle breakdown. Now, that's not a huge issue, but there are some other issues with the BCAAs that just would lead you to say, well, it's not really all that beneficial versus other things. Now, what we could suggest is some EAAs, so the essential amino acids. Maybe that makes sense. Again, whole protein, maybe that also makes sense. So if we're in this stage of our training where we're like, look, I want to make sure that I'm building muscle and I'm fueling these workouts, you could maybe take some carbohydrates and some whey protein powder during your workout so that you know that you're getting nutrients to the muscles during and immediately after your workout when you need it. So you're effectively ensuring that energy levels are topped up through the workout. And then you're also making sure that the nutrients are delivered to the muscles, etc., immediately after the workout, because you took them during the workout, they've been dripping out, you know. Now, the only issue with that is, especially if you've used lots of caffeine or other stimulants, you know, we're kind of working two different sides of the nervous system here, in terms of we've got the SNS and the PSNS, often abbreviated to the PNS, even though that's a peripheral nervous system, rather than parasympathetic nervous system. And we've talked about it before, but I hate the sympathetic, parasympathetic, because they should be the other way around, because it's really confusing. But anyway, this SNS, that's really like fight or flight. Let's go. Let's fucking get hyped. That's what caffeine is doing, right? When you eat food, you ideally want to be in this PSNS, you know, this like rest and digest. Okay, recover, relax, right? So you're kind of giving the body mixed signals here by stimming yourself out of your mind, and then taking in nutrients that require you to be in the PSNS to really get the benefit from, right? So you're either shifting yourself away, shifting yourself out of that SNS, let's fucking go, or you're staying in that SNS, let's fucking go, and you're not actually able to really rest, digest the nutrients. So either way, we do have to take that into account. So the higher stimulated you get, probably the less I would focus on intra-workout nutrition, even though, you know, that might be different to what some other people would suggest, you know. But anyway, that's a little bit of an aside. Intra-workout, Gary, carbs and maybe whole protein, maybe EAAs. Like, the only reason I would say EAAs is purely because they come in lots of different flavors. That's a good thing, you know. Whereas like, you're like, oh, I want a nice fucking drink during my workout that makes me excited to train, etc. Like, you can get like cola flavored EAAs, you can get sour apple flavored, like you can get unicorn piss. Like, there's so many different flavors out there of EAAs that it can just make training a little bit more enjoyable, make hydrating during training a little bit more enjoyable, and as a result improve performance. And whereas like whole protein, like, yeah, there's different flavors of whey protein out there, but like it still kind of tastes like dairy, you know. Maybe you don't want to drink that during your workout. But anyway, what's your thoughts on intra workouts, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I ever use really is carbohydrates. I am a big fan of, you know, carbohydrates within the workout for longer sessions in particular, or if I've been fasting for a prolonged period. Okay, so intra-workout nutrition always starts with pre-workout nutrition. So if I've had a good meal, you know, in the hour or two before, I don't need to have carbohydrates during my workout. But a lot of the time when I'm training jiu-jitsu, I don't like eating soon before. Anyone that's trained jiu-jitsu can probably figure out why. But it's just not, it's not something I like to do. So what I try and do is I'll generally have a meal 3 to 4 hours before, if I am eating before jiu-jitsu. If it's a morning session, I often won't eat. And if it's at, you know, 6 o'clock in the evening, I'll have my last meal at lunch, which is 1 or 2. So I won't be eating again before then. So as a result, it's going to be a while since I've had any source of carbohydrate. So I might have something like a Lucozade Sport, or one of the high five carbohydrate powders that I have, or dextrose, anything like that. I'll have that during the session. So that really is where I end up using them. If I'm also doing something like a long run or a long cardio session, I'll use them. For an average gym session, heading to the gym, lifting weights, 45 minutes, an hour, not really a big deal. It will give you a bit of an edge if you haven't eaten before and if you're doing a very high volume session. But for a lot of the sessions that people do in the gym, when you see the intensity they're training at, you see the overall volume they're doing, and you consider that they've eaten 2 hours before, probably not too much of a big deal.
100%. Which brings us to the post-workout. It's the exact same thing here.
Same message. Yeah, exactly.
Literally the exact same thing. Like, we want some energy, not to provide this even, you know, dose of energy through the workout. It's to provide the energy to start recovering from that workout, to start, you know, building the muscle, whatever the adaptations are, right? So yeah, we probably want to restock glycogen stores. And again, this is like Gary was saying, these things change. The importance of these things change depending on the workout, what you did before, what you did during, etc. You know, so like if you haven't eaten at all in the pre-workout or intra-workout period, post-workout nutrition and post-workout supplementation probably becomes more important, right? But if you've had a pre-workout meal, you've had intra-workout carbohydrates and protein or EAAs, like you've kind of already started the post-workout nutrition, refueling, etc. Like you can push out a meal 2 hours after your workout then. Whereas I would be less inclined to push out a meal or post-workout, supplementation, whatever nutrition. If I was like, all right, I just had a fasted workout. Like I often, 99% of the time, I just train fasted in the morning, the gym, or I do my cardio. And then I just have a meal after that, for me, that works, but that meal is important to have after that because, well, first of all, I usually have jujitsu later in the day. So I want to make sure that I've restocked glycogen, etc. If I was to push that meal out and go, oh, I'll just eat middle of the day, that means I've probably gone 16 hours without food. I'm training first thing in the morning. I had food the night before, haven't eaten now until the middle of the day. The vast majority of a day without nutrition, with a workout in there, like I'm probably not optimizing muscle building, recovery, etc. Right? That's okay for some people. That might be just like cool. They're just working out to stay healthy. They're not really looking to optimize everything. But obviously, if you're looking to optimize everything, you would have more focus on post-workout nutrition in that case, right? But in terms of supplementation, usually I'm just airing for food. I'm like, that's food is the goal post-workout, right? I wouldn't be like, oh, you need to have a protein shake. Like they can be handy. Like Gary, you have a very busy schedule where you have to be in different places. Like I have to be in my house, like I don't have to go different places. The food is right there in the fridge, Whereas if you're in different places, I'd be like, all right, Gary, for you, maybe it makes sense to have like a protein shake after your workout. And like, that's just easy nutrition for you. Shake it up, boom. You don't have to think too much about it, whereas that might not be the case for other people. Now, there is something, unless you've anything to say on that, Gary?
No, not really. Just agreed.
Some people will suggest, oh, well, maybe we'll, start dosing with some like antioxidants during the workout and post-workout. There's some oxidation that occurs during workout, during training. So we want to hammer the body with some antioxidants to help improve inflammation and different things. That doesn't seem to be all that beneficial. In fact, it actually seems to be counterintuitive, counterproductive in terms of it actually seems to blunt some of the adaptations to exercise. Now, to what degree? Again, it depends on the dose, it depends on the exact antioxidant that you're using, et cetera, and it appears to be less of a problem if it's food-based because there's a whole food matrix, it takes time to digest, et cetera, But I just wouldn't be hammering any kind of anti-inflammatory compounds, high-dose antioxidant supplements, stuff like that in the post-workout, intra-workout, or even the pre-workout period. It seems to be counterproductive for the adaptations that we want, both cardiovascular adaptations, strength adaptations to a lesser degree, but muscular adaptations as well, So antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, etc. In my mind, they're not really something I would be prioritizing in this kind of peri-workout period.
Yep, I would be forced to agree.
Forced.
Yes, I would be inclined to agree. Now, with that said, one more thing on that is that sometimes people get carried away with this. They think, oh, antioxidants are bad, so no fruit, no blueberries.
That's what I said. It seems to be different when it's in a food matrix,
Yeah.
You can have your fruit. Yeah, you can have your fruit, you can veg. Gary, let's say again, you're a busy person, you're having like your protein shake after your workout in the morning. You're like, oh, like I want to get some carbohydrates. Oh, the only source that they have here is one of those like fruit smoothie drinks. No, I'm not going to get that. It has antioxidants in it. Yeah. I probably wouldn't matter. Like I probably just wouldn't care. I would just get it. There you go. There's some carbohydrates. There's some extra nutrients. It's probably still going to have some effect. It's probably a little bit too refined. Those antioxidants might get into your system a little bit too quickly. Would we be better off having something like food, like all those vegetables, fruits, whatever the fuck they're putting into that in terms of food? Yeah, probably. That's probably going to be even better, right? But effectively all we're saying is don't just be like, oh, here's a 10 grams of vitamin C that I'm adding to my post-workout to quench inflammation. or here's a load of curcumin that I'm just going to fucking hammer into post-workout to quench inflammation, or here's any other antioxidant, here's a load of vitamin E that I'm just going to take post-workout. Like those kind of things. I just wouldn't be prioritizing it, but I wouldn't be worrying about it if it's in food or even in a more refined source like a smoothie or something.
Yeah, at best it does nothing, and at worst you're taking a like super reckless high dose and it might compromise your adaptations. Again, it's more of a recommendation to not be going for it rather than a immediate avoidance or anything else.
It's not a priority during this time period. That's all.
Definitely not.
Anyway, Gary, that's the peri-workout supplementation. Now, again, we can go down a rabbit hole of any fucking number of nutrients, because you can just pull up pre-workout supplements, you know, and you'll get a billion fucking hits because they're a very lucrative market. People make lots of money in this area, and to do that, they have to distinguish themselves from other competitors, you know, and it makes sense. Like if you have, oh, my thing has 20 different scientifically studied, validated ingredients on your list, someone reads that and goes, 20 ingredients, fuck, that's good. And they read this other one, it's like 3 ingredients. Nah, fuck the 3 ingredients. Even though the 3 ingredient one might actually be in effective doses, whereas the 20 ingredient one is just, you know, so lowly dosed that it's just does fucking nothing at best, you know. So we're not going to dive into all of the fucking millions of different supplements that we could, or compounds I should say, that we could potentially talk about, but that's my perspective anyway. Gary, do you have anything to add to that? And if not, do you want to wrap it up?
No, that's everything from us for this week. So obviously we're talking a lot about nutrition now, supplements, etc. So if you'd like to take your knowledge to the next level, we recommend getting on our nutrition certification. So whether you want to be a nutritionist, you want to up your game as a coach and, you know, get better at your nutrition coaching, or you're just interested in taking your knowledge up a notch, you can get involved with our nutrition cert at the description box below, at the link in the description box below. And if you're interested in coaching, you want personalized guidance as to how you can maximize your health, fitness, performance, etc., you can also apply for a space to work with myself or Patty or another member of the Triage coaching team below. We also have a newsletter that goes out each week, currently going out twice per week. So you're missing out on a lot of content if you're not subscribed to the newsletter. So make sure that you do that, and also make sure that you're following us on social media at Triage Method, and also our individual pages, which you'll find once you head to the Triage page. And then finally, if you're enjoying the podcast, we always appreciate when people share it, leave a rating and review if you can, you know, tell friends about it, all that sort of thing. So that's everything from us.
Fantastic. We'll see you next week, guys.